Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Strong Stoic Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Tumblin. There's two elements to self-improvement overall, or philosophy, you could say. There's the learning of the philosophy, and then there's the application of it. And I know this is very hard for people to hear, but it's not as simple as just learning something and then your life gets better. Learning something is the first step. It's a crucial step, but it's not going to give you positive results in the long term, just knowing things. So what does that? Well, I'm glad you asked, dear friend. In this episode, I'm going to be going over how to apply philosophical principles. If you would like to support me, consider joining my Patreon. You can check me out at Brandon Tumblin there. Really appreciate that. Consider joining my Telegram group chat at the Strong Stoic channel chat. You can also find my articles on the Stoic Gym magazine, which is a free magazine. I think it's the biggest magazine in Stoicism, probably. But anyways, and also on Medium, you can find my articles there. And also check out my Substack, which I recently started doing. If you like episodes coming right to your email, I started sending them out through Substack, and you can also get the transcripts of the episodes as well, sent right to your email. And I'm going to be playing around with that Substack as well. So if you are into the old email thing, go consider checking that out. All right, let's start with the first step here, learning. This is hard enough on its own, learning, really, right? How should we best live in order to flourish? That's kind of like the question that this podcast explores, if you could say it in one phrase. There are many different ways of life to choose from, though. Like, there's Buddhism, there's Christianity, there's Islam, there's Hinduism, there's Stoicism, of course. So how do we know which one to try out? And you really don't. You really just have to try something out and see what happens for the most part. Though the philosophy that the people around you that you really respect, that's probably a good place to start. If you respect someone that is a Buddhist, you might consider becoming a Buddhist. Or if you respect someone that is a Stoic, you might consider becoming Stoic. Or if you're like me, I respect all of them in their own ways. You can, become a learner of all of them, but you still really have to choose one to sort of latch onto. And for me, that's really been Stoicism for the most part. Though the philosophy that you choose to adopt, if you look at someone and you see that, hey, actually, this person is really respectable and I would like to be more like them, just ask them what their philosophy is. And they might not be able to tell you if it's Buddhist, if they might not actually be a Buddhist or a Stoic or anything like that. But they might say, well, I don't really have a philosophy as a way of life. But then they'll start describing their philosophy as a way of life. They'll start saying, well, I think you should get up at the same time. I think you should be disciplined. I think I value taking care of your family. And then you can kind of dissect what's important to you. So let's say you decide, I'm going to try Buddhism. You start to learn the principles. Then your rational mind comes in as you're learning the principles and you ask yourself, does this make sense to me? Not necessarily is this scientifically true, but is this philosophically true? Will this make my life better? So you learn, and hopefully something makes sense to you, and then you try it out. And this can be very difficult. For example, if you adopt Buddhism, and you learn that meditation is a great way to calm the mind, well, then you have to go meditate. That's a habit that you have to form. And often, you have to ask yourself, well, how often do I want to do this? And for how long do I want to do this? These are the basic questions that you have to ask yourself. And then you have to force yourself to do it, even when you don't want to do it. Because here's a very shocking and weird truth. This is really bizarre. A lot of the things that are best for us, including the things that we know are the best for us, we often don't want to do in the moment. Like going to the gym. One of the best things you can do is exercise for the body and the mind. Yet when 5 o'clock comes around and you got to grab your gym clothes, there's a reluctance there. You've worked all day. Now I got to go to the gym. So when you adopt a practice and a habit, you have to go into it knowing full well that the motivation is going to run out someday. And you're just going to have some discipline. So how do we have discipline? How do we develop discipline? Because a lot of people will just say, well, just do it. Or you just got to be disciplined. But that's not that helpful, really, when you get down to the practical application of it. Discipline is really hard. It's probably the hardest thing ever, period, because everything you do in life gets down to discipline. Even things like philosophy, which I'll get into now. It's like Discipline is like running into a wall over and over and over and over again, and you're just hoping that someday you're going to break through that wall. But like all things Stoicism, it really gets down to your perspective on it, what's going on inside your own head. Everything comes back inside your own head, how you are perceiving and thinking about the situation. Here's an example. You have a day where you don't want to go into the gym. What allows you to get over that and go into the gym anyway? People say, well, you just got to get up and go, man. You just got to get up and go. But that's ignoring the internal dialogue that actually happens. It's something like, I don't want to go to the gym. I'm tired. I had a long day. I went yesterday. I could use a day off. In other words, your mind immediately starts looking for excuses as to why and how you can justify taking a day off. And then your stronger self talks back. Is me not wanting to go to the gym really a good excuse? Is that really a good excuse? Yeah, I'm tired, but once I get into the gym, I'll have more energy. I know that because I've been there before several times, lots of times. Yes, I went yesterday, but my workout schedule says I also have to go today too, so that really it doesn't matter. I don't really need a day off. I'm not that sore. I'm not that tired. Come on, I can do this. Now, this is just an example because other people have different thought patterns. For example, the people that tell you, well, if you don't want to go to the gym, just say you're going to go anyway. What they're saying is, whenever they get that thought into their head, I don't want to go to the gym, they immediately start thinking, well, just go anyway. Just get in there anyway. Really what you're doing here is you're changing your perspective to one which allows you to act in a virtuous manner. What happens is you have a not so virtuous thought, and then you respond to that thought with a virtuous one. You replace it with a virtuous one. I had a university math professor who gave me a very useful analogy. He said that when you start doing calculus, you have no idea what you're doing. By the way, would not recommend doing calculus. I was actually quite good at calculus, but it's not something I do on a Friday night. Anyways, he said that when you start doing calculus, you have no idea what you're doing. But what you need to do is you need to develop these grooves in your brain. That is, you see a problem, you recognize a pattern, and then you approach it in the appropriate way. Oh, this equation looks like that. Therefore, I am going to use this approach, this solution. In the same way, when you're confronted with a perspective that isn't aligned with your philosophy, such as making an excuse to not go to the gym, you have to train your brain to go to another perspective. Feeling lazy in the gym? Change my perspective to be grateful that I can even go to the gym. Want to indulge and eat a full Black Forest cake by myself? Recall the goal that I have to lose weight. I don't want to speak truth out of fear? Well, that would make me a coward, and I don't want to be a coward. You have to have these grooves in your brain that as soon as you notice a negative pattern in your thoughts, you immediately shove those thoughts down, these grooves, which leads you to a more useful perspective. You replace the bad thoughts with the better thoughts. Now, how do you do this in practice? How do you form these grooves? Because it's nice to say, well, someday I'll have these grooves where as soon as I start to feel lazy, I think something and then it vanishes. But it's basically a habit. There's no simple answer. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. You may have to start by writing down the perspective that you don't want to have, and then write down the perspective that you want to replace them with. For example, this is a recent example from my own personal life. If you want to start getting up at the same time every morning, 7 a.m., you can make a list of all the excuses that you will have. Okay, what's the excuses that you have when you first wake up in the morning? I'm tired. Replace this with, I can just go to bed earlier tonight. Here's another excuse. It's cold and the bed sheets are warm. Replace that with, is this really what your purpose in life is? Now that might sound familiar to you Stoics. In fact, Meditations is essentially a journal where Marcus Aurelius is doing just that. He's meditating on the things he has to mentally deal with, and then he's writing down exactly how he will actually deal with that, how he is changing his perspective every time he has this bad perspective. I'll have to read you this which is it's a little long, but it'll be worth it because this is just a great passage from Marcus Aurelius, which you're probably familiar with. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of? If I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm? So you were born to feel nice instead of doing things and experiencing them? Don't you see the plants, the birds, the ants, the spiders, and bees going about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can? And you're not willing to do your job as a human being? Why aren't you running to do what your nature demands? You don't love yourself enough, or you'd love your nature too and what it demands of you. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful words from Marcus Aurelius. So you may have to start by journaling and reviewing this daily. That might be the first step. Okay, what are my excuses and what are my responses? What are my bad thoughts and what am I going to replace those thoughts with? Eventually, you'll be able to do it in your head, though it might be slow at first. But soon enough, if you practice it enough, you'll get to the point where as soon as your weaker self starts talking, starts thinking bad thoughts, your stronger self interrupts it with a better perspective. Oh, I'm feeling lazy. Just get to the gym. Oh, but I don't want to. Just go. What are you talking about? Come on. This is not what you want to be. You want to be someone who is disciplined, who is focused, who is strong. It starts to get to the point where your weaker self can't even start talking because it gets interrupted by your stronger self. I wish there was a pill that you could take that would make you more stoic, but that's not the case. In fact, that might be a bit of a lie. I don't wish there was a pill that you could take because then everyone would have it. And stoicism is something that only the people that really work at it deserve it, just like anything else in life. You have to build these brain grooves, and it takes time and patience. Hell, Marcus Aurelius was still doing it at the end of his life. Have patience, practice every day, don't be too hard on yourself. And over time, you'll notice that loud voice telling you to be weak gets weaker and weaker and weaker. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Consider leaving a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. If you're new here, episodes every Tuesday and Thursday. Not going to bug you guys anymore. Thanks again. Cheers. Until next time.